Hey everyone, it's Carolyn. Welcome to the channel. So today I'm going to be doing a video for those of you where you get a tarot deck and now you're like, okay, I have it. Now what do I do with it? Like, how do I read it? How do I form a connection with it? How do I trust my intuition? How do I understand what the cards are telling me? And so this video is kind of be going over what to do with a new tarot deck, starting from right after you get it out of the box, how you can connect with it, how you can understand it, and how you can build up your intuition so you can understand the messages that it's telling you. So if that's something you want to learn more about, definitely stay tuned. I'm also going to have other videos linked in the cards above for you to watch after this one. If you're new to the channel, I want to say welcome. Please subscribe. I would love to have you a part of this family, and make sure you turn on that bell notification so you don't miss out when I post my next video. I post multiple videos every single week, and I do more educational videos like this. I also post unboxing videos of different tarot and oracle decks, and I also do readings to help you understand your life better. I do collective readings, zodiac readings, and pick a pile readings. So now jumping into today's video. What you're gonna do is after you get a tarot deck, take some time to go to a space where you can kind of clear your mind. You can spend some time connecting with this tarot deck. This could be some place that you do meditations. This could be like your desk in your office that you use just for yourself. It can even be you sitting on your bed in your bedroom. Just go someplace where you can be with your own thoughts, you can connect with your deck, and where you're not gonna have a lot of distractions around you. And then what I would suggest for you, if your deck comes with a guidebook, I would really suggest to read the guidebook and to read the beginning pages of it, see what it tells you, see if it gives you more insight on the major arcana, the minor arcana. You don't have to necessarily read the parts where you get to the cards, but read the beginning pages before it starts to break down the cards and see if the author has any insight on how to work with this deck in particular. Now, not every single deck is going to come with the guidebook, and that's okay. You don't need to read one, but it does help give some background knowledge if you have never worked with tarot cards before. And everything I'm telling you for tarot cards also works with oracle cards, so feel free to use this no matter what type of deck you have. But I would suggest to read the guidebook if it's there, because it's going to help you understand the author's intention for this deck. And so after you read the guidebook, when you have your cards, then I would suggest to cleanse them in some way. Now, you can do this in a multitude of different ways, and so there's no right or wrong way, and not everyone believes in cleansing your deck, so just do what feels right for you. Some generic ways to cleanse is smoke cleansing. You can put a crystal on your deck. You can even just pick up your cards and tap them 3 times, or even just shuffling your cards like this can be a form of cleansing, and you're just kind of removing any stagnant energy. So do what feels right for you. Again, there's no right or wrong way, and if you don't want to cleanse your deck, you don't have to. But sometimes when you cleanse the deck, it feels like you're removing any previous energy, and now you're reclaiming it as your own, and you're building up that connection that you have with your decks. So that's just some reasons that you might want to cleanse, but again, just do what feels right for you. So then what I suggest you do with your cards is take some time to shuffle them. Make sure you figure out a way that shuffles that works for you. So the 2 ways that I like to shuffle, there's the riffle shuffle, and then you have the overhand shuffle. And I just got a jumper, 5 of swords. But basically, you want to find a way to shuffle that works for you. Some people, they just like to split the deck, and then maybe they'll pull 3 cards from each. You know, just find something that works for you. Shuffling is very personal, and so again, it's all about what your own intuition is telling you. Some people, it's like how I got a jumper, they read only with jumpers, whereas other people, they'll shuffle, and if they get a jumper, they just put it back in and wait until they feel like the deck has been shuffled, and then they'll just pull from the top. So again, it's about looking up all the different ways that you can do something and finding what feels right for you. But then I suggest that you take time to do an interview deck spread. Now, if you don't know how to do this, I actually have a whole video in on itself, and so I'll have that linked in the cards above that breaks down what an interview spread is, and I actually have my own spread there that you can use to interview your own deck. But basically, what this deck interview is going to do, it's going to allow you to understand what this deck is going to work best for and how you can best interpret this deck. It's going to help you to figure out how this deck reads to you, basically how you're interpreting this deck, so you know what moments to use it for. So for instance, after you start to get a lot of different decks, you kind of see that they have different energies about them or different styles to them, and that's because the different artwork resonates differently for you, and so it's going to create a different message where it's not that the message itself is changing, it's more the delivery of the message is changing. Because especially when you're working with tarot, everything is based off of the same deck. It's all based off the same ideas, the same concepts. So it's not like you're gonna have drastically different messages, but you're going to find that certain decks, they give this softer approach with things where when you read it, you understand things, but they're not aggressive. They're very lighthearted, and they're more so giving you this gentle advice, whereas you can have these other decks where they're telling you the same thing, but they're being super brutal, they're being blunt, and they're being kind of aggressive with how you're understanding the card, where it's almost like it's slapping you across the face with the truth. And so both of them, they're telling you the same thing, but the way that you're interpreting them is different. And so in turn, the way that you're going to resonate with that reading might be a little bit different, because if there's a deck that has a more gentle approach, that might be great when you actually need the gentle approach. But if there's something that you really need to pay attention to, that might not be the best deck to read with, because it's not giving you that sense of urgency. Whereas if you read with a deck that's very honest, very blunt, that's going to kick you into gear, get you doing what you need to do, and get you back on the right course. So it's really about figuring out what type of reading style this deck has, so that you know the appropriate times to use it. And this way, if you start to get more than one tarot deck, you can see what deck is the better deck to use. Or if you only have one tarot deck, you can understand how it reads, and you can understand the way that you're interpreting it. Therefore, when you're giving people readings, you know when to use your own discernment to say, hey, even though the cards aren't saying this, my intuition is going to say this a little bit more harshly so that you understand it. And you can start to understand how you and your own sense of intuition can work with the deck. And so like I said, I'm gonna have my whole video about the deck interview linked in the cards above that you can watch to understand how you can do this with your cards. So next, what I want you to do is I want you to take your cards and I want you to start to flip through them, and I want you to have one pile for the cards that are really catching your eye or you're being drawn to, and then I also want you to make a pile for the cards that you dislike, the cards that are stirring up some negative emotion. Any cards that you're neutral, just put here in the third pile. We're not really going to do much with those. We want to pay attention to the ones that you really love, that you're drawn to, or you feel like has a message for you. And then you also want to pay attention to the ones that's causing you to have this emotional reaction to it in some negative way. So then go ahead and put your neutral cards off to the side. Then I want you to go through the cards that you're drawn to, and I want you to look at them, look at the artwork, see what about it is calling your attention, and see what you're sensing from this card, what energy you're picking up. And then I want you to go ahead and either with the guidebook that came with your deck or by using Google, look up the meaning of the card and see if that matches what you sensed for it, and then also see what your own individual message is. And I want you to go and look at all the cards that you were drawn to and look at the message for all of them and see if you can kind of like weave a story or a message using all of those different cards together. And so this is going to act as almost like your first independent tarot reading with this deck, where you're looking at the message of all the cards that you were drawn to. And so try and interpret what it means for you, try to understand it, and I would write it down if you can so that you'll have a record of it. And then I want you to go ahead and take all the cards that kind of stirred up some negativity or just this weird energy for you, and I want you to do the same. Look at the messages, see if there's any patterns. So for both of these, see if there's any patterns of any suit in particular that you're drawn to with this deck, or that you have this visceral reaction to with the deck, and see what that can mean for what that suit is representing. But also like pay attention to what these cards are meaning and what their signs are, and treat the cards that you dislike as a type of shadow work. So see the messages of what they represent, and then sit with yourself and see what in your life is causing you to not like these cards or to have this reaction emotionally to these cards. And so take your time to really do the shadow work, meditate on these cards. And so again, treat this as like a reading on yourself of what you need to hear and what you don't want to hear, but what you need to acknowledge about yourself. And this is not only going to help you understand the artwork of these cards and start to tie together the imagery and the symbolism with the actual meanings of them, but it will start to help you build a connection with these cards. And by looking at the cards you dislike as well, it's also going to force you to work with them, so you remove your own bias from the cards. So you're understanding the duality and the complexity of the cards, where even if you have a negative card, so let's say like with the Three of Swords here. You have the Three of Swords. Now, you don't want to have your own bias when doing readings where you always treat this as a negative card and you put your own projections into the reading. So by doing the shadow work with it, you can understand the complexities of the card and you can see the sometimes positive message of the card. Now, is it always going to be a positive message? No. But sometimes the Three of Swords is appearing in a reading to say, you know what? This has not been working out, and it's time to acknowledge it has not been working out. It's time to stop putting energy towards something that you're trying to sew together, that you're trying to patch together, when you need to just rip it apart and let it break. And so you have to understand that when doing readings, sometimes negative things are actually a blessing in disguise. And with the cards that you really do like, you know, sometimes they can have a positive message, but they can also have a negative connotation with them as well, that you need to understand that no tarot card is good or bad. All the tarot cards are neutral, and the message overall, with your own discernment, with your own intuition, will tell you if it's a positive message or a negative message. But even with the negative messages, tarot doesn't tell you stuff for the sake of complaining. Tarot is a form of guidance. So when you're working with tarot, everything it's telling you, if it's negative, it's either as a warning or it's telling you the harsh truth so you can do something about it, so you can move on, or so you can create a change. You're never gonna receive a tarot reading that's just simply like, well, this is all you can do. I guess things are never gonna get better. Tarot is a form of guidance, and so always remember that there's two sides to every card. And now some people, you read with reversals. I would recommend when you're starting out, unless you are drawn to work with reversals, to just learn the card as itself, learn the duality of the card, where you understand the good and the bad for every card, and you're not waiting for it to be reversed for you to do the opposite message. Allow the cards to just mean everything, and then again use your own discernment of what other cards come out during the reading before you make any judgments on which way this reading is going. But I want you to use these two piles to, again, understand the cards, form the connection of the symbolism with the meaning, and also show yourself, you know, by thinking about these cards before looking up the meaning in the guidebook, show yourself that your intuition is correct and write things down. Keep note of it so you can reflect on this as you progress with your readings and you start to develop your stronger sense of intuition. And what I would recommend for you moving forward with readings is to allow yourself to write everything down. Either record yourself when you're doing readings or write it down and keep note of it. You want to have some sort of record of your readings so that you can reflect on them and you can see what you were accurate about and what you weren't accurate about. And I also would suggest, if you're new to reading tarot, you don't only have to read for yourself. You can read for other people in your life. You can also go on Facebook groups or other social media in general and offer people readings that you are doing, you know, saying up front that you're new to this, that you might get it wrong, and this is more so for practice. But there are going to be people who are willing to let you practice on them. And so as long as you're upfront about the fact that you're still new to trusting your intuition, don't be afraid of getting the message wrong. And I'm saying this because I was someone where I kind of didn't know. When I first got into tarot, I didn't know that like people were making money with it. I didn't know that people were going to tarot for big life-changing guidance. And so I just started reading for people, and I would just tell them up front, like, hey, it might not be accurate, like let me know if this resonates for you. And I just practiced with people because I didn't have the fear of being wrong. And I feel like that was the best thing for me to do because it taught me very early on what was my intuition versus what was me guessing, because I would wait for their feedback and see what I got correct, how it felt. I'm like, okay, so this is how my intuition works. And then it made it where I started to get more and more accurate readings, where everything I was doing, I was trusting my intuition, and I was having people say, that actually happened for me, or you're spot on, that's exactly what I'm going through. And so by getting the feedback and trusting myself to not be afraid of getting the negative feedback and using it to learn from, I was actually able to grow my intuition without the sense of fear. I didn't get in my own way. And so that's the best advice I can give to you, is don't only read for yourself, because as someone who reads tarot professionally now, even reading for myself, you have your own bias of the things you want to hear and the things you don't want to hear. And so it's not that you can't read for yourself, but that's never going to be your most accurate readings. You're actually going to have a better chance of accuracy by reading for other people because you have no stake in the game. The outcome of the message that you're giving can be your intuition and the full truth of the matter, because you're not worried about telling your ego what it wants to hear. Whereas when you're reading for yourself, especially if it's something you're emotionally invested in, you want the cards to go a certain way. And so you have an easier chance of trying to convince yourself that a card doesn't mean what you actually know it to mean, because you want it to say what you want to hear. So I would recommend reading for other people, either online, using that disclaimer, or reading for your friends and your family. And be like, hey, I want to practice on you. And a lot of times you're going to find someone who lets you practice on them. And so I would really recommend like reading for other people and recording everything, writing it down, so that you can actually see what came true, what didn't come true, and you can work on that. And now the last thing that I want to recommend for you is that when it comes to reading for yourself, I would recommend every single month to kind of make monthly predictions, where you see cards to do your own monthly message and see what you're predicting for that month. And again, write this down or record yourself. And I want you to then at the end of the month to look at everything you predicted and see what came true and what didn't come true. And I also want you, when you're reflecting on your predictions, to look at them not only as the exact details that you predicted, but the overarching energy. So maybe you predicted that you were going to start a new job at so-and-so place. Well, maybe you didn't start a new job at that place, but you did start a new job, or something similar to that, where maybe it's the small details that are tripping you up, but the overarching energy, the big changes, you're actually very on point with predicting them. Kind of look at the patterns throughout the months that you start predicting to see what you were correct with and what you weren't correct with. And keep a record of these even after the month has passed, because maybe there's something you predicted in an earlier month, it didn't happen that month, but it does happen relatively shortly after that. And so because you kept that record, it's like, okay, you weren't wrong about it, you just didn't get the timing right. But this will also help you develop your intuition, start to trust yourself, because it will show you what you were accurate with, and you'll be like, oh my God, that's so cool, I got this correct. And it's going to build that positive reinforcement with you, where you're actually interested in predicting things, where you're actually interested in developing your own intuition, because now you get to see it play out in front of you. And I also feel like when you're making predictions for yourself, it's a little bit easier to read for yourself in that regard, because it's not something that you're going to be overly emotionally invested in. You're going to be like, you know what, I'm just predicting things and we'll see what comes true and what doesn't. Whereas if you're doing a reading on something that's very emotionally close to you, and you get a message you don't want to hear, it's going to be hard for you to accept that. So again, it's not impossible to read for yourself. I'm someone, I do read for myself, but it's just not the only way you want to build your sense of intuition, because it's not going to be the most accurate as if you read for other people. And when you're reading for people and you get a card, what I want you to do is, when you get the message, let's say that you get the Eight of Pentacles, the Fool, and the High Priestess. So first, look at the cards themselves and figure out what it is bringing up for you, what you're sensing from them, what you're understanding from them, and then go ahead and read the guidebook. And so first, come to your own conclusion of what the meaning is, and then use the guidebook. This way you get to see what you were sensing on your own without the references, without relying on another source, just what your pure intuition was telling you. And this will also allow you to start to connect with the cards and figure out what they mean by seeing what you picked up from this syncs with the guidebook, so that you can start to be like, okay, this is the vibe I get from this card. So when it appears, instead of always having to reference the guidebook, this is what it means for me. This way you start to use the cards almost as like flashcards for yourself and what they mean, instead of relying on another source to tell you. Now, it's always great, no matter where you are with your practice, to look at the guidebook, see it has a meaning that you're missing, but you don't need to use it all the time. And you don't want it to be something that you have to refer to all the time, because what if there's one day where you forget your guidebook? Now you can't do readings. Whereas if you start to build up your own sense of understanding what the card means without the guidebook, then you can do readings whenever. And so it makes it where there's more flexibility in your schedule. But really, when it comes to getting a tarot deck and developing your skills as a reader, it's really just about allowing yourself the time to practice with the cards, to look at the images and see what symbolism you're picking up from them, and just allowing yourself to practice trusting your intuition and keep records of things, so you learn what your intuition feels like. And by understanding what it feels like for you and understanding how you interpret the cards, that's then going to allow you to find your own reading style, and then be able to find a way to do your your own type of tarot readings that resonate for you while passing the message along to others. And this is really going to help you understand how to work with the cards. You can start reading cards no matter where you're at. You can have psychic abilities. You don't need to have psychic abilities. The cards are meant for anyone because everyone has a sense of intuition. And so as long as you can start to build that muscle of what your intuition is, you can read the cards. And no matter if you're reading tarot or oracle, everything has some sort of structure within it. Tarot has more of a universal structure, whereas your oracle deck may only have its structure in its own guidebook, but there's going to be references either in the guidebook or online where you can understand the meaning of the card and you can use that to help build your intuition. And so it's almost like flashcards for your intuition in a sense. And so just by understanding the meanings of the cards and what the images mean to you, you are going to be able to give people readings and to read for yourself and give yourself guidance, because that is really what tarot is. It's a divination tool, but it doesn't matter what your skill set is. It's a tool that you can develop and that you can build. It's the same as working out. You can start working out being very muscular, but you can also start working out where you don't have any muscles and you need to build it all. It doesn't matter where you're at. It's going to be different techniques. It might take longer for others, but you're going to be able to develop it. And so if you're new to tarot or you just got a tarot deck, I hope that this helps you out. I hope that it gives you some guidance on what to do now that you have tarot cards, so you're not just like free falling trying to figure it out. And so if you found this video helpful, let me know in the YouTube comments down below. Also give this video a big thumbs up and share with others who might need this help. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I would love to have you a part of this family, and make sure you turn on that bell notification so you don't miss out when I post my future videos. I'm gonna have other videos linked in the cards above that you can watch next, and I can't wait to see you all in my next video. I hope you have a good one. Bye.